tell me about yourself. How did you grow up? Where do you come from?
So I am a Chattanooga native. So I was born and raised in East Chattanooga, specifically on the border between Churchville and Bushtown. So I grew up on the same street with my grandmother, Betty Mott, and my aunts. So I come from a very tight-knit community that had a lot of elders, that had a lot of families. So that's where I was born and raised. I'm in the middle of 2 siblings. So I have an older brother, younger sister, and then my mom and my dad, Timothy and Rebecca Mott. So we were a trio, and I'm probably the one that got in the most trouble, more than my brother and sister combined. I think that's middle children. Ask a lot of questions, challenge everything. I'm also an Enneagram Type 8, so I'm a challenger. So I was always questioning everything, but I only spoke up about things that mattered or things that impacted people. Other than that, you could find me in a corner in my room reading a book or listening to music with my headphones. So I don't talk about things that don't matter or involve myself in things that I feel aren't really championing other people and impacting them positively.
Would you say church is also a big part of your life?
Absolutely. So I am a pastor's daughter. I grew up and was raised in the Church of God in Christ, which is Pentecostal, and I actually worshiped in the same community that I grew up in. So church was an avenue also that we did so much work in the community, whether it was helping the homeless, whether it was doing giveaways for clothes and food, whether it was volunteering and picking up trash and doing so many things. Community activism was something that we did through the church growing up, so doing it as an adult, it's not like anything new, it's just getting back to my roots.
Wow. What do you do now, outside of from being an activist? How do you pay your bills?
So I do graphics design work. I did the corporate America and felt like I was kind of getting boxed in and very stressed out, so I pieced out and I just do freelance work.
So graphic design, I mean, is that something that you've always been interested in?
Art, period. I believe art tells a story in ways that sometimes words cannot. So being able to express that in a way that represents somebody's brand or a business was very, very important to me. And also that a lot of minority individuals don't have brand representation, may not be able to afford things like logo or packaging when it comes to branding. And so being able to actually boost Black businesses to be represented on social media, which is important if you want to market yourself in today. I also did, because I'm running for city council, I did my own logo. So every time I look at how I'm going to be walking into the future, you know, I did that, and I love that.
We'll get more to the city council in a second.
Tell us some of your influences growing up, and who are some of your influences now?
First influences, my parents. So my mom and my dad. My mom is a chemist and then became a project manager with TVA, came straight out of Poss Homes on the south side. My dad is a military service veteran, is in law enforcement. And so just my parents, how hard they worked to be able to provide me and my siblings with a great life. They're my first inspirations. Other than that, my grandmothers, they had a hand in shaping me as a woman and teaching me about my history, what it was like. Both of them were born right before the Great Depression. So they talked a lot about segregation, but also they talked about what Ninth Street used to look like and the Black businesses they used to be able to support in this city in Chattanooga. So I have a historical context nationally from them, but I also have a historical context locally from them about where Chattanooga came from as far as the African American contribution that gets overlooked a lot in this city.
So looking at your YouTube videos or your Facebook videos, you always greet everyone as family.
Mm-hmm.
When you're greeting everyone, like who makes up that family that you're greeting?
Everybody. Even the people who probably don't like me or don't agree with me. You're still family. We're part of a human family, right? Race was something that was created to divide us, but I mean, you strip color out of it, we're all the same. We just have maybe a different language or a different context to life, but we're all human beings. So family is everybody, even the people that might not like me or agree with me.
Is that family growing here lately?
That family is exploding. And it's even been interesting having people tune into my lives who don't agree with me, but still feel accepted enough to come into the space with me. That's important. And you don't always have to agree with me. At least let's find some commonality about how we want to push Chattanooga forward and push our country forward. That's really what I care about. Not really you aligning with every aspect of what I think. If you did that, you're a robot, and I don't need you to be that. I don't want you to have your own brain and your own voice. But I hope that we can align on how we want to make where we live as far as a city and a country so much better.
Yeah. You know, just from the time that I've been in Chattanooga reporting, I've seen you lots of times at council meetings. I've seen you come to press conferences. So let's talk a little bit about being an activist and what got you interested in doing that and up to now.
So yes, I've been very involved, but part of that was a process of learning how to get involved. I didn't necessarily start out saying, well, let me check this box, I'm gonna be an activist tomorrow. That's not really how it happened. It was just responding to, it was Avery Gray's daughter getting dragged out of her mother's car. I saw that on a Sunday evening on a recording on Facebook, and someone tagged me in it, and it was the first time that I ever done a live stream where I expressed my feelings. It's a little bit difficult for me to share how I feel. And so I did that openly in the public, and it went viral. And then the next thing I knew, that turned into all of these years after. So I didn't really seek to be an activist. I just spoke up about something that was happening right where we are that is a symptom of things happening nationally. And then from there, I've just been afforded the ability to meet people in the community that have been doing this longer than I have, who I certainly respect, whether that's the Unity Group, Concerned Citizens for Justice, the Nation of Islam with the Community Haven. There are so many people whose shoulders I stand on. And it was really getting back to, what did I know? All I knew as a child was being connected with my family and serving the community. And so I just did it in a different way to where it intersected with civics. So I asked my pops, I was like, what do I do about this young lady who got dragged out of her mother's car? I don't know what to do about this, but it's not right. And he was like, well, go down to the city council. And I'm just like, well, what's that? So he kind of pointed me in this direction of engaging civically and open up a world for me to be able to get involved with more than just the community, but how does decisions and different things and people who are representatives impact some of the things happening in community.
It's amazing. Where did you get, would you say that it's your grandmother? Would you say it's your parents? Where did you get that fire of, when you know that something inside isn't right, doing more than just saying this isn't right?
Definitely get that from my folks, especially, well, my dad is a preacher, and then my mom she's also a type 8 personality, so a challenger. She just does it through corporate America. But my parents have never been the silent types to just see things going on and not address them. We firmly believe in having, sometimes if it's challenging conversations, challenging one another to do what is right. But from what I hear, my grandfather died early, before my father was 18 years old. But I've heard how I get a little bit from him, and my grandmothers were tenacious. They were kind of night and day in how they came across, but both of them also challenged us to stand up for what is right and to do right by people. So I think I borrow a little bit from everybody.
Yeah, you get it all from everyone. That's awesome that you come from a family that is all like that. So take me back to, I think it was maybe 3 weeks ago when the protests first started. I remember watching the video. I came out the second night, but I remember watching the video of you with the megaphone, and you're yelling and you're talking, and you can feel it. I mean, it gave me goosebumps when I was listening to you and everything you had to say. For you, what was that like when you started seeing people coming out and you started, I mean, we had never seen anything like that here in Chattanooga in recent years. So what was that like from your perspective?
It was mind-blowing. I got there 15 minutes early because I don't like being late, and it was over 200 people waiting already, and I'm just like, what in the world is happening? Like, do I need to rub my eyes? Because this can't be real. And then people still coming afterwards. So I was just mind blown, because sometimes you don't get the feeling in Chattanooga that people may know what's going on, or that people are aware of what's going on. And I know that COVID-19 has slowed life down a lot, to where people who are usually in the rat race of life, just trying to take care of themselves, can now see a lot of what's going on because they're just chilling at home. So I was just surprised, but at the same time, I was encouraged, because I'm like, yes. It's not just me and a handful of my comrades. It's not just a little bit of us, but there are a lot of people who are not happy with what's going on.
So it was the why protesting in Chattanooga is because I know the nationwide responded to George Floyd murder. Is it something here locally that make you say, you know what, this is not just a George Floyd thing, but this is something that occurred in every city, and it needs to be addressed?
Absolutely. 2015, we had Javario Eagle, who had a mental health call. Called 911, was shot multiple times by multiple officers within the Chattanooga Police Department in front of his 4-year-old daughter. Why do we have police responding to mental health episodes? There should be professionals who are hired by our city that take care of things like that. There are other cities that are doing that. Dallas is one of them. So that's one example. That example extends all through Chattanooga history. The brutalization of women, that was one of the things that has happened in the last couple of years. It was Avery Gray's daughter. Then about a week and a half after that was Diana Watt, which is in my district, right across from my neighborhood in Avondale. So it's that. We had Officer Desmond Logan that raped 3 women. I went before the council for a year after Zach Peterson with the Times Free Press broke that story. And we started having a lot of conversations offline about some of the women that came forward and different things. And go for the council, it took a year before anything happened. And he pled guilty to that. So we have brutalization, we have murder, we have rape of citizens here in the city of Chattanooga, my Lord. And then we had a lot of officers that were drinking on the job and crashing their vehicles, committing domestic assault against their partners. This is a problem that doesn't even just impact the African American community. This is impacting police and how they respond, is impacting their own personal lives. So this is not just a George Floyd. George Floyd is a name on a very long catalog that just got longer because we just had another young African American man shot in the back in Atlanta just a few days ago. So this is bigger than Chattanooga, but the reason for the protest is us dealing with how it happens and manifests in Chattanooga.
You know, the moment when Jerry took a knee, you were right there in front of her. What was that like for you?
I don't really have a feeling about that moment, because I was talking to her offline about my expectations about police and my expectations for her. I appreciate the gesture, but gestures don't change how people are impacted by police. What changes how people are impacted by police is holding police officers accountable when they have malfeasance against the community. So I appreciate the gesture, but gestures aren't merely enough.
Do you think they're willing to listen?
I think they've been listening for a long time. I think they're not willing to move beyond listening. My grandmother said that if you listen, that there should be a response after that. Otherwise, you just heard what I said, but you didn't do anything about it. So I think they hear us, but as far as I haven't seen this drastic change within the Chattanooga Police Department on how they treat citizens.
You kind of led right into my next question with Divest and Invest. Talk about that, because at first it was defund police, but then that kind of morphed because I don't think everyone was really understanding what that meant. So talk about, that's something that you guys are calling for and the whole Black Lives Matter movement is calling for across the nation. So talk about that.
Absolutely. So I said divest from the very beginning because often the jargon, depending on how you are coming across, can totally cause people to panic. You say defund the police, they're like, oh my God, you're going to drain them of the entire police budget. And that's not what we're talking about. Divestment is just calling for a portion of the budget to be divested and reallocated into resources that are plainly social services. Again, police are overwhelmed with responsibilities that they don't belong to them. Police officers cannot be trained to be behavioral specialists or therapists. There are people who go to school for that, get degrees for that, have extensive training to be able to deal with individuals who are who are just dealing with a lot. And so if we see other cities, because Chattanooga claims to be a city of creators, that's Mayor Burke. So I believe if we're a city of creators, that should also extend beyond economics. It needs to extend into creating solutions for longstanding problems that we have in the city. We have more than a quarter of our population locked in poverty. If you've never been in poverty, poverty is stressful, okay? A lot of people in our communities are working 2.5 jobs just to be able to make ends meet, trying to take care of their family. That can be a lot on you. There are a lot of households in my community that are single parented by Black women, and so they have a lot on their plate. And so we have to create solutions to be able to deal with that. And just beyond police, I mean, when I think about senior care, the greatest issue I think going into this election beyond community safety is going to be affordable housing. There are so many different things that the city of Chattanooga should be investing in instead of a reactionary force as the police. The police are there to address really symptoms of outcomes that happen long before they ever get a call. And so how do we begin to address the needs of the people and not investing in reactionary forces that are either going to brutalize them, harm them, murder them, but more than likely incarcerate them.
What's your feeling about the oversight committee that was handpicked by the city council?
Park, for the police?
Yeah.
It's not an oversight, so that's something that we've constantly had to educate the public on. So when we think about an oversight committee, we're thinking about something that is representative of the people, meaning just like in Nashville, the people get to choose who's on that board by vote. The people get to structure what sort of power this board has. The people get to decide how much money and resources, because it also is about resources that this board has to be able to make more than just recommendations, but expectations on how the culture of policing needs to change and how people are held accountable in that process. So Park automatically is not any oversight, and it has police on it. So for me as a community member, my experience with police is not positive. So sitting on a board with other police officers kind of, to me, skews and taints how this is going to be effective in holding police officers accountable. I think it needs to be autonomous from the council and from the mayor. I think it needs to be something that is strictly governed by the people and chosen by the people, just like Nashville. And we went before the council with that expectation. They just decided to reactivate Park, and Park has been around for, I think, over 10 years. So it's nothing new. It's just trying to scrub its image to say that it's an oversight board. It's not.
the fire department, I think it was in December, they started I think it was called CFD Connect, where they kind of started, they were using some of those UTC students that are going to school for some of those issues, those social issues that you were talking about a second ago. Do you think that's a step in the right direction? Not completely what you were saying would take some of these calls off the backs of police and have professionals handle it, but along the lines of what you're calling for?
I think it's a step in the right direction, but Chattanooga, if we're going to be a progressive city as we claim to be, we got to do more than take a step. I think Chattanooga has led the way in a lot of things. When we talk about public-private partnership, when we talk about downtown investment, we've led the way in that. It's time to lead the way in how we address problems in the city. And so I think that is a beautiful thing that they've started that process, but it's not the fire department's responsibility to take Chattanooga into the future. It's a responsibility of leadership. So I want to see a commitment from my leaders that we are going to take seriously social issues and social problems. And perfect example, I went through a case study about the force that was created in Dallas, Texas. They have had, in just a year, tremendous benefits on lowering the amount of recidivism, the amount of people that get admitted into the hospital with behavioral episodes, just by having people who are actual city employees that respond to these calls, where community members are just in need and just having a tough time and need somebody to address them. And also, in a way, this ties back into what Bert expects of the police, which is to build relationships with people in the community. Well, we have to have other people that do that without the fear of incarceration lingering somewhere in the background if it doesn't go well. Which, for a lot of people from poor, impoverished communities, that's usually the outcome. So I appreciate that the fire department, those guys fight all the time, and in my opinion, don't get enough of the public safety budget. But I want to see a commitment from the leadership taking us into the future.
Burke isn't going to be in office for much longer. Have you been having these conversations with the people that are running for his seat?
Absolutely. So Monte Burrell came out with a position about participatory budgeting. So this is already spilling into next year's election. There's been solidarity. Tim Kelly came out to the protest along with Monte Burrell. So we've had support from people who are running and having offline conversations with them about what we expect when it comes to the future of Chattanooga.
You got something?
You're a daughter of a pastor, of a preacher. What has been the response from community leaders and pastors in Chattanooga? Have they reach out? Have they try to, come up with plans to make amends within the community along with your agenda?
A few have. Clergy in the city sometimes is apprehensive about taking a step. And I think part of that is because what it might look like if they side with protesters and organizers. But we have had, whether it's Pastor Carruthers, Kevin Muhammad with the Nation of Islam, Pastor Charlotte, Ann Pierre, Marcellus Barnes, Leanne Jones of the Young Ministers Network. We've had ministers that have been there with us, who are willing to support us. We just haven't had that be overwhelming.
Kind of bouncing off of that, what about other Black elected officials in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, and even the NAACP? I mean, I think about all these protests and who's leading it. It's not any of them, it's you. That just stuck out to me.
Well, I'll say this. Part of the reason why you don't see some of the participation from some of our long-standing traditional groups within our community is because there is not a lot of youth involvement. So this is something that is happening within the spirit of the youth. And I'm just going to challenge my local organizations, if you want to be carried into the future, and have some sort of relevancy into the struggle that we have decided to pick up. You've got to invite us in. We don't mind, but we don't want to be part of bureaucracy. I think we deal with that enough when it comes to government, the red tape, the bureaucracy. We expect that there's going to be some expectations of us, but invite us in.
We were kind of talking a little bit about this off camera, but from these last few weeks of the protests, as an outsider, or covering it, I should say, we've seen the protests evolve, where at first there was a lot of emotion, there was a lot of anger, and rightfully so. But how has it changed, and kind of talk about some of the things that you guys have learned throughout this process?
So there is no handbook to being an activist or organizer, just like most things in life. You learn by doing. So protest is to highlight an issue. That's the purpose of protest. And shame on the individuals that said that we were just doing it for social media. I hope that by now you understand that we didn't. We were doing it to highlight an issue that's happening nationwide, but that's also happening right here in our city under our nose. We have grown to the point to where when we started, we had people that were getting arrested, nobody that looted or rioted to the point to where we've burnt down anything. I want to make that emphatically clear. We have not done that here locally. I thank my friends and my comrades, C. Grimey, Bree Stevens, Steve Bedford, Concerned Citizens for Justice, Anthony Wiley, Caleb Golson. The names go on and on of young people who have worked with me to ensure that we began to channel that energy more effectively. And so, of course, we made mistakes in the beginning as far as maybe how we came across when we protested, but we got that quickly under control to where we haven't had any arrests in probably over a week and a half. The other things that we started doing, of course, is long-term strategy. So what is the outcome that we want? And that's where we came up with aligning with the national call of divestment and the two policy changes that nobody has given the protesters credit for. We proposed those on our own as an expectation as well. So we've already gotten two of our demands met. The only thing left is divestment. So we've already got some wins under our belt, and we're not even done yet. We're just getting started. Seeing people engage. So we've talked a lot about the budget with divestment. So educating the people on, do you know that there's a city budget? How much is in it? And where all that money that you pay in taxes is going to. And people have been utterly shocked, which has shown us that there are a lot of people who have not been engaged civically to even know that there's a budgeting process and that they should have a voice in that as where their tax dollars are going. We started registering people to vote because we know that we're going to be going into an election cycle. We started educating people on the census and filling out the census because we know that that's going to impact the amount of money for resources we're going to get in our community. So this has turned from just we're angry and we have every right to be angry, to how do we channel that into a way to where we elevate our community, encourage our community that to not just be angry, but to do something constructively about that. And so that's been a beautiful process. And then that turned into making history with shutting down the city council for 7.5 hours. And all I asked the night before, I asked for 100 people to sign up. I got way more than that. So people are coming alive in this process and beginning to find their own voice in this process and speak up about what's important to them. It's one thing for us to say it as organizers and activists. A lot of us have been in this fight for so long. We're not saying anything new, but to have new voices from all across this city in various different neighborhoods and various different experiences in life speaking up about what is happening has just been a beautiful response, and just seeing people come out day after day after day, businesses that have donated food to be able to feed us, donated water, the clergy, Trisha Dillon, who and the women clergy who have come down there every single day to watch over us and communicate any potential danger. To our marshals, we've had marshals with Democratic Socialists of America that are on bikes every night, making sure that we are watching to make sure that we're not going to get hit by traffic and that we're doing this safe and we have security. This has just been, we started raw, but this has turned into a well-organized, well-oiled machine that now is ready to take on the city and get some wins for the people.
Will this continue to prolong after the protest, the educating of folks and informing the younger people of what's going on and how they should be aware?
Absolutely. We want people to be empowered. I think it's hard for you to move without knowledge. I think it's hard for you to know what to do without some sense of direction. So we want to tie into whether that's participatory budgeting, whether that's what is a people's budget like they're doing in Nashville. What does it look like to be able to not just register to vote, but in the long term, how do you work the polls, and how do you get messaging out? How do you hold a space to be able to engage a candidate and talk to them about the expectations you have for your neighborhood? So I'm excited to just see how this is multiplying into education in so many ways of how people can not only just raise their voice, but just advocate for their own needs. Because I don't want people to lean on me forever, right? I want to be able to equip the people to do like my grandmother said, and she would tell me all the time, baby, one day you're gonna have to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. And so I want to help the people be able to stand on their own 2 feet and be able to fight for themselves and their families and their communities.
You know, with Chattanooga has the beauty of being a big small town. Mm-hmm. With so many people that know each other. I mean, you've met Roddy lots of times. I mean, you know the key players in all of this. Mm-hmm. Do you think moving forward that because of that we can all move forward unified and be unified one day, and we can be a model for how, you know, kind of like some of the other, like Dallas, like Nashville? Do you think that one day we can be one of those model cities?
Absolutely. Chattanooga has done that in so many other areas. I mean, just look at a lot of the response that we have with COVID-19 didn't come from top-down solutions. It came from the people coming together and then bringing in those at the top to the table with us. So I'm encouraged that we're already starting to move in that direction. I think the goal should be to expand that and widen how people can get engaged, because everybody's not going to want to engage the same way. For some people, it might be even beyond the city level. So, of course, we have fights going on within public education and within core civic and what we're talking about with prisons. So this conversation, I think, is just going to be expounded upon. I'm so hopeful for the future, and I hope people are inspired that if we focus more on what we can agree on than what we don't, we can get so much done. And if we're willing to get out of our comfort zone and think outside of the box and just look at some of the other examples being set by other cities and just fitting it custom for Chattanooga, we could do so much good in this city. Chattanooga has so much potential, but I want it to be more than just the beauty, the surface level stuff. I want it to be things that are meaningful.
Just to change this just a tad bit, what are your expectations for media? You know, I know that in some instances that some people can tell that the protests could have a black eye based on reporting. What are your expectations from us to get the word out to say, hey, this is actually going on, this is what the protest is all about?
Be honest.
Yes.
And don't paint us with a wide brush. We're not doing this like every other city, right? We have been very, very adamant about trying to keep our protests peaceful, and at the same time prove as young people, which I pray, even those that may not understand us or come from our same experience, I hope you can be proud enough to see that we as young people got 2 policy wins already. we are moving rapidly towards divestment. We have changed how people have interacted with city government through city council. We have done so much good. I want that to be covered just as much as people kind of painting us with a wide brush of negativity.
That's a fair statement.
Yeah.
Let's talk about is it tomorrow, the sales tax?
Yes.
Let's talk about that. What does that mean? And what's the day called again? I don't have it.
So basically, it's just going to be businesses supporting us to not collect sales tax. So that is huge. And potentially they're putting their businesses, I want to really talk about that seriously, potentially putting their businesses at risk. As far as I understand, they can have their business licenses taken from them by not paying sales tax. But they care so much about the issue that business owners are willing to take that risk. And man, I'm trying not to cry about that, but I just want to really say thank you to the business owners that have just been in the trenches with us. It means so much to me that there are others that really understand the importance of what we're doing, to the point to where they're willing to put even things that feed their family on the line. That's just as important to me as the bodies that are out there marching every day. So I'm excited about that, actually.
You know, you mentioned that you're trying not to cry.
Yeah,
but
don't do it.
but really, I mean, why is that so emotional for you?
Black people have been fighting since the day we got here to be free. My grandmothers came up through the segregated South. Even my parents were raised near the end of the segregated South. This shouldn't be a future experience for my people. When I look at my family, I have just my aunts, my uncles, my father, my grandfathers. Almost all of them have served in the military. So I have a tremendous amount of people who have not only done community work, but who have served their country even when their country didn't serve them. At this point, we shouldn't be begging. We shouldn't be having mitigation about this. By now, mercy, if we call ourselves the greatest country in the world, we should be doing so much better in how we lift people up. And we've had people who have sacrificed their life. You know, Dr. King didn't die an old man. He was assassinated for this very fight. Fannie Lou Hamer was shot at in a sharecropping field for this fight. There are so many people who have dedicated their entire lives and their bodies for this struggle. All we want is peace. That's all we want. And a right to have the same life that only a certain small group in this country get to have.
Let's talk about the future for you.
Okay.
So, a political run in your future?
It is. So I am running for City Council District 8, which is the community that I was born and raised in. I am so excited about that.
And that's Anthony Bird's seat, right?
Yes, that's Anthony Bird's seat, correct.
Is there a reason why you want to run? I mean, I know that feels like a dumb question, but is it because you just want to get involved, or is there something that you're not happy that he's doing? Kind of explain that.
Absolutely. So the first reason why I'm running is because community members asked me to run. So there was an overwhelming amount, the deeper that I got into my activism and working with things in the community, such as the Boone High Singer Project with Nippon Paint, and trying to get ahead of that on what we wanted to do with that land, and being part of the team of folks that brought various different people from the community in on dreaming about what we wanted to happen with that as an expectation if the city was going to bring a business in for a community benefits agreement. there were so many people who came up to me and were like, Marie, will you run for city council this next run? And I'm just like, I don't know. Well, let me think about it. I've tried working with Anthony Byrd. I don't want to say anything negative about him, but I'm very dissatisfied with the work that he's done in the community, whether that is the promise that he made to save Lincoln Park and that hasn't happened, whether it was we knew something was happening at Boone Height, but we were blindsided by that, not having any small level of communication, at least about, maybe, of course, I expect that he couldn't talk about the details of business transactions or decisions, but I think he could have given us some foresight into how does the community begin to prepare for what's coming. That didn't happen. So I've just been dissatisfied, and so the reason that city council exists is, first of all, because of African American people such as Annie Thomas, Lorenzo Irvin, Maxine Cousins. They sued the city to get a city council in the first place, and the purposes of that was Black people did not have any fair representation in city government, and because of that we lacked resources and the ability to be able to speak for our needs. And so that is the purpose of every city council seat, even beyond the African American representatives, is so that there can be a fairness in representation, and that communities that have been long overlooked in this city have their needs addressed. And that really has not happened in our district.
Those are all my questions. You good?
Yeah.
Marie, is there anything else? I know we've talked about a lot of stuff, but I think it's all important. But is there anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't touched on?
No, I just want to thank you guys for the wonderful invitation to be able to sit down with you and have a intimate conversation. I appreciate that. And for the people, I want the people to be encouraged no matter what's going on. I know this time is overwhelming for a lot of people. Make sure that you take care of yourself. And as always, if no one's taken any time today to let you know you're a loved human being, I love you all, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Thank you, Marie.
You're welcome.